Hi, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Ghazal and I will be your host for this webinar. We have an excellent in house mentor with us today. So, before we commence, you know the drill. We're going to be waiting for, say, another 30 seconds for more participants to join in, and then we will commence. So get comfortable, put in your earphones if you're driving, and get some snacks if you're not, if you're at home. And we'll be commencing shortly. Thank you. All right, so we see that more participants are joining in. We're going to be waiting for another 30 seconds and then we will commence. Welcome and thank you so much for being with us here today. All right. So thank you so much once again for joining us this evening or morning, uh, whichever time zone you're in. So before we commence, I would like to give a quick introduction for Mr. Sajrai. He has had over 20 years of experience in the cyber industry, in also multiple different fields and industries as well, like insurance, retail, healthcare, education, and it is coupled with 13 plus years of experience in IT leadership positions. He's been a head of IT, he's been a CTO, he's been a VP of information technology, he's also been a CISO. And he has a thorough understanding of what the industry needs, what these examinations are all about, what they are trying to test in participants, And this makes him the perfect mentor for anybody who is preparing for ISACA or ISE2 certifications. So today he's going to be discussing CRISC. It is going to be one of our first webinars, in fact, on the topic of this certification. But rest assured, Mr. Rai has conducted, I'm sure at this point, hundreds of CRISC sessions with like thousands of learners already. So without further ado, Sasar, if it is a good time, would you like to take the stage?
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. I hope I'm loud and clear. Can you please confirm if you're able to hear me?
Yes, perfectly audible, and we can see you too.
And I'm sharing my screen as well. I hope that is also visible.
Correct. Please go on, sir.
Great. Um, just a moment.
So while Mr. Rai is setting up, we
So yeah,
encourage
so
the
welcome everyone, and to this series 2025 um, webinar. I just want to introduce to you what to expect from this particular webinar. Let's take a look at. So let me very quickly introduce myself. I think Ghazal has already done that. I have 2.5 decades of experience in various industries, in teaching, training for over a decade now. Um, and I am an authorized instructor for most cybersecurity courses, including CRISC, which is one of my favorite courses to teach. And I am just excited to have this webinar with you and share some of my knowledge, and maybe looking forward to my next batch on CRISC. So we kind of talk about some of these things, career relevance. Why would you want to become a CRISC? What are some of the changes that has happened recently this year? And how to go about preparing for the exam. Okay. And so, why CRISC into 2025? That's a big question. And there's a huge demand for risk practitioners as we're moving more into IT, into AI, and so the risk has never been become more important today. And the global the crime rate going up, the number of the fines or the money that loss is over $10 trillion estimated annually. Okay, there is a and CRISC is consistently ranked as one of the top paying credentials. There's a lot of demand for risk practitioners today. So, for example, we talk about AI taking over your jobs, right? But the AI kind of introduces, or rather, requires more risk practitioners to be around, mitigating risks. And also, um, yeah, so there are many serious holders around the world. The demand is much, much higher than what the supply is at the moment. Okay. So yeah, so there's a lot of demand. If there is one demand that's going to grow, that is the risk practitioners. And this particular course, it doesn't matter what role that you're playing. At the moment, you could be a security manager, you could be an auditor, you could be a VA, PT person, or a software developer. Really doesn't matter. Risk management is critical for everybody. So whatever role that you play, risk management is an important part of your responsibility. And so, unlike some other courses, when I like, let's say for example, the CISA course is again more specific for your um, for the auditors or the CSM, mostly from the information security manager and so on. But the CRISC is a more generic course, though it comes from the risk practitioner point of view, but this can apply to any role that you play in the organization. Right? Now, the question is, are you serious about CRISC? And is this the right course for you? Right. So again, like I said, I think this course is relevant for anybody who is into risk, who's into security, information security. You could be a VA or PT, but this helps you grow into that IT risk governance or decision making role. So if that's something that you're interested in, well, this is the course. Okay. So does your experience align with IT risk and enterprise risk concepts? Okay. Again, there you go. Are you ready to move from that technologist mindset to more of a managerial mindset, the business risk professional? Again, that's another area you need to look into. Are you prepared to continuous learning? That's important from any ISACA course or any other courses. It's about a continuous learning. Serious is not the end of the world, and this may be the beginning or part of the journey. And so, once you become a serious, you need to continuously learn and gain those CPE points as part of the learning experience. Anyway, so there has been some changes in the series quite recently, and so the new exams already started since November. And the question is that a major change? And the answer is, well, not really, not really. It's not a major change. As you can see, even in the percentages, we have four domains: governance, risk assessment, risk. I'll talk about these domains, but you can see minor changes in plus minus 2% here and there. Does it make a difference? Well, the percentage doesn't make a difference as such. Maybe, you know, three, four questions up and down shouldn't really make a difference as such. But there are certain additions that we need to be aware of. Not a major change as such. It's not something that is going to break your learning from what you have been learning so far. If you've already been preparing for CRISC previously, it's not going to make a difference. Though there are some of these new topics which I think is relevant, the changes around 5 to 10%, not more than that. So some of this new content that has been added, like the AI risks. Okay, so this is again very important again. So it's not going to be discussed so much a lot in detail here because they already have another AI related risk management course. However, we will be touching upon a lot of AI related risk, which is absolutely critical here in today's world. So all these AI related vulnerabilities, the different threats that poses to your enterprise. So we need to be aware of that. They've also added the quantum computing, and it's very interesting. Quantum, though it's not something that is in production today, but the quantum should be around in the next 5 to 10 years. But we need to be prepared today, right? So it talks about, say, harvest now, decrypt later. What does that mean? Well, it simply means that many of the top secret information or very sensitive information, which may be protected today using the regular uh, algorithms that we have today, and that's fine. We are still protected. But when quantum becomes a more of a reality, 5 to 10 years down the line, these top secret information being protected with the existing algorithms will no longer be safe, no longer be secure. So what the attackers are doing is that's collecting all of these top secret information today so that when the quantum is ready, they can decrypt it. So, so these things are very interesting. Harvest now, decrypt later, or encrypt now, decrypt later. These are some of the terms we will discuss. Zero trust, again, we are not here to learn how to implement zero trust, but the importance of zero trust and why is that important. So here we are mostly understanding the what and the why rather than the how. And there is more focus on the third party risk, the supply chain risk management. That's becoming more and more important. Think about some of the attacks that has happened recently, you know, because of the third party risks, supply chain risks. Okay, so we're going to talk about that more. The expansion on the focus on these areas highlights the importance of these domains. So these are the top, some of the top changes that has occurred this time, or the additions. And so C-risk is not technical. Okay, so that's important thing to understand. It's not technical course. It's a managerial course. It's not for beginners, and uh, and so we need to move away from the technical mindset, right? So I'm not be teaching you how the tools, or I'll not be giving you how to do the vulnerability, the pen testing and all the stuff, right? It does not require technical implementation knowledge. You don't have to be a technical person to do a C-risks. And many people who do the C-risk are from the governance GRC team, who may not be very familiar with technical tools. And okay, we're not here to fix things. Okay, or we're not here to, again, like I said, move away from that engineer mindset to a more of a managerial mindset, right? Less of a practitioner, more of a manager or a leader. So the focus is going to be on the risk decisions, the business impact, the governance, and so on. Here is some interesting mindset that I have for you, just to give you an idea as to what a C-risk mindset looks like, right? This is what I teach during the course, the mindset. For me, I think the most important thing for me to teach in C-risk courses is the mindset. And that's what the ISACA wants you to learn. So, some of the things like risk ownership, right? Now, the risk is owned by the business. The IT does not own the risk. Okay. So, Frank, risk ownership matters more than the technical solution. Okay. Or risk ownership belongs to the business. The CISO does not accept the risk. Okay. Who accepts the risk is the risk owner, typically the business unit leader. And the CISO is more of an advisor, a more of advising, or could be a control owner at the best, but is not the risk owner. Okay, and so we don't rush into fixing things when you see a problem. Okay, so it's the risk owner who will make the decision, and we will support the risk owner in implementing those controls. So which is based on the risk appetite. Okay, so again, like I said, risk is owned by the business, not IT. So these are mindset that we need to learn. Okay. Or let's see another one. Yeah, risk assessments comes before the controls. Okay, so again, when you see a problem, we don't rush into fixing it. Okay, so we need to assess the risk before we evaluate. So we evaluate the impact, the likelihood, and only then we think about the response. Okay, so we always start with the risk assessment before we rush in, before we move into the response part. The controls come afterwards. And first, understand the risk. Okay, these are the C-risk mindset, the management, the manager mindset. It also says strategic value over tactical action. So again, saying let's implement SEAM immediately because that's the hottest thing around. Everybody's doing that. Well, then the answer is no. We don't do that. We don't just upgrade a SEAM or buy a shiny new tool just because it's very nice or everybody's doing it. Well, we got to evaluate the business case. Do we actually need a SEAM? Okay, is it gonna and is there a return on investment? Will it reduce the risk to an acceptable level? Is it cost effective? Is it aligned to the business goals? These are the questions you need to ask before you rush into any technical solutions. So, a very important key, a lesson that you learn here in domain one is the business alignment. All right. What else? Um, Another one, business impact over technical severity. So you may come across a CVS score with the critical CVS score, and so the question is that something that I need to rush into? The answer is no. A presence of a vulnerability is not a risk. Okay, it's not a risk. Now, this is something that I teach and give you with more examples. A lot of people think just because there is a threat or there's a vulnerability, that there is a risk to the organization. The answer is no. Okay, so if the fundamental concept of risk is a factor of likelihood into impact. Likelihood of what? Likelihood of a threat exploiting the vulnerability, which results in certain risk to the organization. And so that is what we need to consider here. Okay, just because there's a vulnerability does not mean that we have a risk, because we need to also assess the presence of a threat, also the presence of the impact. Okay, so that's what we need to understand. It says incident response starts with the plan. That's true. That's true. Do we have a plan? Do we have those? Do we have those procedures? Do we have the policies? Okay, and so we don't go into ad hoc reaction. That yeah, we have an issue, that's disconnect the server and notify the legal team. Is that the way to do it? No, no. Do we have a proper plan? That's what we should. That's what we should. What else? Prevention is preferred over detection. Okay, so always better. Always, it's important to log and monitor the firewall, for example, but it's also important to implement those preventive controls. In fact, we need to think about, so all the controls, and so we talk about, let's say, how do I prevent this incident from occurring or this risk from occurring, and then how do I reduce the impact if this particular incident or the risk materializes. So what do I do? So I need to think about both the things, not only the prevention, not only just the detection, but both. Okay, because there is no such thing in the world which is 100% secure. We cannot prevent everything, and so if something occurs, an incident occurs, then the question is, how do we deal with that? So we need to reduce the impact. So two parts of it, as I mentioned: have preventive controls to try and reduce the likelihood of a threat exploiting the vulnerability, and then have those detective and corrective controls to try and reduce the impact. So thinking both, that's important. It says communications with stakeholders is key. That's absolutely correct. So, and we talk about this while we do assess those risks. Well, we fix those risks. It's important to monitor and report these risks to the various stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Well, it could be your board, the management, the business teams, the operations teams, or any other stakeholders who would be interested in that, in those information. So the serious mindset values transparency. Okay, all those reports needs to state what's going on, traceability, and the accountability. Okay, so all of these things are critical. What else? Yes, as continuing with that discussion on communication, so we need to ensure that there is a proper KPIs and KRIs and even a KCI, key control indicator. Okay, these are all very critical, and we have dashboards and so on. We learn these things. It's so this data-driven reporting to the leadership or the stakeholders is absolutely critical. Okay, so we need to learn that as well. It's not just about the identification assessment, but also the reporting, communications becomes important. And it says documented risk acceptance is a valid decision. Um, Management ignore the risk. Okay. Now, ignoring is not a very good option. We want to make sure the management formally accepts or avoids or transfers or mitigates the risk, whatever that option is, after evaluating the cost, the impact, the risk tolerance, and so on. Okay. So whether it's accepting or whatever the response is, it has to be a risk aware decision. Okay. And it has to be documented. Where to be documented? Well, most of you should be able to answer this. Most likely in that risk register. Right? This is something that you should be able to maintain and build a risk register. So these are some of the mindsets that you probably need to have for your risk management. Let's look at some proven strategies. Yeah. So when you go about preparing for this, it says, so understand the why. Now, this exams like this, which are more managerial exam. So here we focus on the why, not so much on the how, right? And so there's hardly anything to memorize. Hardly anything to memorize. We need to focus on the higher level of justification, being able to make the right decision. Many times in the options given, there are four options per question. So many times, more than two options are correct. In fact, several questions, all the options could be correct. But we're not here to select the correct option. What we need to select is the best option. Okay. And in order to make that best decision, you need to have that deeper understanding. You need to be able to understand the principles, and I call them the thumb rules. And this is usually what I teach. And some of the mindset, the thumb rule that we just learned about, these are some of the examples. But there are many more that we need to learn in order to be able to answer the questions, but also being able to make the right decision in our day-to-day world, day-to-day work, right? So these principles that we learn here is something that will last you for your entire career. Okay, it's not just for this particular course, but once you learn these principles, you should be able to apply that. And usually more than 90% of the time, you will be correct if you use these principles. Okay. So yeah, so focusing on the why, that's more important. There is nothing to memorize. There are no definitions or lists you need to memorize. It's all about understanding the concept, and that is what matters to risk management and any other managerial courses. Okay. Uh, Practice scenarios. Now, this is important. You need to practice, and there's a second way of learning of answering question. Like I said, four options and learning the tricks, the keywords. Sometimes there are these traps that they give you, so you need to understand those traps, understand the principles, and some of the keywords that they use, like what is the primary reason to do this, or what is the greatest concern, or the least important, or what's the next step to follow. So you really need to understand the concept. So like I said, maybe all the answers are correct, right? But the next step is not not all of them. You just need to select one of them, right? The next step. So the principles are important, like I said. And eliminating wrong options is important. Elimination techniques that you do. So understanding the principles and being able to just eliminate. Usually, you're able to eliminate out of four, two, and you're left with the 50-50 chance. And then finally, using the principle that you learned, you should be able to select the best answer. Okay. So there is a particular Isaka way of learning these things, and I will teach you these things, which principally the thumb rule is about the governance, about the business, rather than the technical stuff that we discussed earlier today. All right. So practice makes confident. Understand the document. Document the thumb rule. Like you keep saying the thumb rule, and 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 so do not. This is important. Do not use these questions, practice questions, to study. And you'll and it's and so a lot of people do that. A lot of people just focus on the practice questions, and I hear a lot of people come to me and say, I didn't pass the exam. Why? Because even though I had practiced 1,000 questions, or even 5,000 questions, and so on. And I ask them very simple questions. Okay. For example, let's say, what's the difference between risk tolerance and risk appetite? Right? A simple question like that. And what I realize is that they haven't really understood the concept. They've tried to memorize these questions and hope that these questions will repeat in the exam, and that's not going to happen. Okay, that's not going to happen. What will be repeated are those thumb rules, the principles that I'm talking about. So these thumb rules is what you learn, but then you use these questions to practice. Okay? Use it as a practice to validate your knowledge rather than to study. So don't just ignore the book and just do the questions and you hope to pass. That's not going to happen. First, read the book, read the content, okay, understand the concepts, and then use these questions to try and validate your knowledge. And if you find any gaps, go back and study again. If you're scoring anywhere between 70 or 80%, well, that's a very good sign. Anything less than that could be problematic, which means you still have to go back and study. Go back and study. Okay. Yeah. So focus when you do this question. Focus on the why it is incorrect. Okay. Not just why it's correct. Why it's incorrect. And sometimes even on the correct path. Sometimes what can happen is I may have selected an option and I got it right, maybe by fluke, by chance. But remember that in the exam, the same question will not be repeated. So the same concept could be repeated. And so understand why you answer that correctly and why is that a correct option, or why is that an incorrect option. So that why is what is the most important thing here. Okay. So practice every day. There is no shortcut. Again, if you cannot study uh, regularly, okay, a couple of maybe minutes or hours every day, I wouldn't suggest recommending studying these things or taking up these courses up, because there's no point. Yeah, okay, so I don't want you to lose your money. So if you cannot study regularly, I wouldn't say every day. Every day, obviously, that's really good. But if you cannot study regularly, then there is no point in taking up these courses. You'll just be wasting your time and money. So, so you should be able to get that time out. Maybe the holiday season coming up, that'll give you that time to invest on your knowledge, invest on studying. But you have to do that. You have to do that. No training in the world will make you ready. You have to invest on yourself, and that hard work is comes from your the time and dedication that you provide. As an instructor, what I can do is give you that foundational knowledge, give you the launch pad for you to prepare, and so you know exactly where to focus on. You know exactly what the the best practices are or the thumb rules are and so on, but it's you who have to practice. You have to go over that iterative learning process to make sure that you really are able to understand those concepts, are able to apply those concepts, and and do well in the exam. Okay, so that's very important. You need to find that time. You may have to speak to your family members, you may have to speak to your bosses to to kind of help you, or to kind of help you with that time, but there is no substitute. Okay? There's no, like I said, there's no cramming. You cannot mug up the questions and take it. You have to have that deeper understanding. Yeah, so some of the common mistakes to avoid. Okay, so avoid being technical. This is not a technical course. So if you think too technical, okay, I need to, for example, I need to implement a firewall. No, that's not what you do. You first need to understand, do you actually need a firewall? Okay. So ignoring the ISACA mindset. And like I said, those there are certain things that ISACA wants you to do, and that's what you learn. Understand. So many people kind of underestimate certain domains. They feel that this domain, I'm very comfortable with that, or they might feel this is not really important for me in my career or whatever it is. So they might underestimate certain domains, and that is something we should probably avoid, right? All the domains are equally important. So do not underestimate anything. So equally, the percentages are not really massive differences. I think so. I think the highest is 26%, the lowest is 20%. Um, so not practicing scenario questions. Yeah, as I mentioned before, you need to practice. Okay, like not study, but practice these questions. Okay, so sample study plan. Okay, so you have to, like I said, have to study every day. There are 4 domains. Even if you spend one domain per week, that's about 4 weeks, right? And so that means you should be done with your study in about a month's time, and then it's now time to, okay, revisit that, because what happens sometimes is when you complete domain 4, you would have forgotten domain 1, and now you go back to domain 1, and so after a couple of iterations is when you start to kind of remember things, right? And so you can have your own study sample plan. This is just a sample study plan for you. And so you need to kind of study every day, practice. If you're attending one of my sessions, which I think begins this weekend, so we cover almost one domain per week. So that probably give you that, this particular, we cover one week per domain. So after 1 month, you're done with all the 4 domains. And now it's more about going over that weak areas, or reinforcing your learning, doing those mock tests, and so on, and maybe take the exam in another month. So within 2 months, you are done with the CRISC. Okay. Yeah, so probably something like that, and it's up to you. Some of you may say, I want to study 8 hours a day and want to complete that in 1 month, or I don't know, a couple of weeks time. So again, you can do that. CRISC generally is not a very difficult exam uh, compared to CSM or CISA. CISA is more difficult. CISA is difficult. CISSP are more difficult. CRISC, I think, relatively easy is what I think. Once you understand the principles, then it's not so difficult. Okay. So 1 or 2 months is the max you should plan for, and if you can spend more time, you can even attempt sooner. Well, final tips for you. Well, so first of all, spend time learning these concepts. Okay, all these job practices in the domains and the tasks from the book, learn that first. Okay. Time management is important in terms of studying or even the practicing for the questions. Uh, so we have about 150 questions to answer in 240 minutes, which is about 90 questions per second. And it doesn't sound much, but once you start working towards the time management, then you'll have enough time. I usually complete these exams in 2 hours, and then the next 2 hours spent on reviewing and reviewing them at least 2 3 times and answering some of those difficult ones that I've marked for review. So, but time management is something you need to learn. It's going to be an iterative study. Like I said before, you once you study domain one and and next domain four, you probably forget some of the domain one concepts. So it's again come back and study it again. So it will take some time for you to get used to these concepts. Okay, you would have forgotten what is RPO, what is RTO. We learned that in domain one. Okay, let's go back and study one more time. So it'll take some time. Okay, that's what most human brains work. That's how it works. I know some people who have a really good memory. So if you're the lucky one, then you may not need that. But for most of us, that iterative study is very, very critical. You need to self-assess, and so your risk thinking. How do you do that? Maybe the practice questions. That's one of the way to do so, right? So and so look at any in day-to-day job and see how should I attempt this based on the principle that I've learned. So try to do that, and more often than not, once you understand the principles, you would be correct. Avoid cramming. There is no rote memorization for this exam, so you really need to understand. Okay, you really need to understand. There is no shortcut to cramming and rote memorization. It's all about understanding and applying the principles. And discuss the risk scenario with peers. Now, so find a study group, um, and so uh, Protect Academy has these study groups that you could join, or the ISEC also has the study groups, so you could join. It's really valuable, or within your organization, you may want to join, talk to your colleagues, your friends. One of the things I would do when I'm studying anything is I would say, hey, join me over for lunch, and I'm going to teach you a particular concept. Say it's risk assessment. I'm going to teach you risk assessment. Come with me. So I find that the best way to learn is to teach. And if your friends are willing to do so, why don't you do it? Right? Why don't you teach them a particular topic? And that way it validates your knowledge as well. You can find some gaps in your understanding in that scenario. Okay. Anyways, these are some of the tips to practice and study. And remember that C-risk rewards risk judgment. It's not the technical depth. You don't have to be a technical genius for C-risk. Okay? And technical control is, in fact, just one of the controls that you need to be aware of. There are other things we need to understand. There are other types of controls we need to understand, which includes physical as well as administrative controls. Anyways, that's it for today. Yeah, so any questions? I think you could use the LinkedIn to post your queries. I will wait for a moment.
Hi, sir. Wonderful session, sir. You've covered a lot. And I think what we learned primarily today is that CRISC is not just a certification, right? It's a mindset. So if the mindset is right, then I think the exam process becomes much, much easier. Great. So we have a few questions from LinkedIn. So I'll post them on the screen and I'll read them out for you as well. So Sharath is writing from LinkedIn. He's asking, it's a hypothetical situation he's put up. He's saying what to do if risk is known and everyone is aware, but no one is paying attention even after a lot of follow ups. given at high level, what to do in such a hypothetical scenario?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think that's very practical for a lot of organizations. Uh, so one of the things I mentioned, I think one of the first thing I mentioned was that IT normally does not own a risk, right? And I there was a couple of slides also I mentioned that risk has to be accepted by a risk owner, which is typically depending on the kind of risk, but typically a process owner or the business owners. My job as a risk practitioner is to make people aware of what the risk is. Right? So, and it has to be done in a formal manner. But as I mentioned, there's a risk. There could be a risk uh, register. Okay. And the question for you is in that hypothetical scenario is have we identified the risk owner? And if there is no risk owner, then obviously nobody's going to take that accountability for a risk. And so that's the first thing. If the risk owners are not being identified, then who's accountable for that? Who's answerable for that? The answer is the senior management, right? Because at the end of the day, they are answerable for the risk to the organization. So your job as a risk practitioner or a security practitioner is to communicate these to the management through proper formal channels and help them aware, make them aware of issues like this that hey, we do not have a risk owner, or the risk owner is not owning the risk or is not making the right decision. Because unfortunately, you cannot make that decision about the risk. What you can only do is highlight, report. Okay, we have a risk. Nobody's paying attention. The risk owner is not defined, or the risk owner isn't paying attention. That's all you can do. So keep that communication open. If they do not want to take that ownership, unfortunately, I cannot take that ownership.
Oh, right, right. Great, sir. There is another question by Thiru. He's again writing from LinkedIn. He's asking individuals having extensive experience in physical security, business continuity, and supply chain risk management, are they eligible to go for the CRISC certification?
Perfectly, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So this typically aligns with all of these things that you said. Okay, some bit of technical knowledge is also important. Like for example, what's the like some not very deep knowledge, but let's say the use of encryption or access controls and so on. These things would add value because we need to also understand the technical controls. But like I mentioned before, security controls belongs to three categories: the physical controls, the technical controls, and the administrative controls. You seem to have the two controls, administrative and the physical one. The technical, if it is missing, you probably need to study that a little bit more. But it's not a very deep technical knowledge. So you need to have broader understanding, basic understanding of these controls that I talked about, like a firewall. What does a firewall do? Like what does access control, like a multi-factor authentication do, or hashing or encryption. So basic understanding of these controls, which I will be covering in the course anyways. But okay, so understanding these concepts would suffice.
Great, sir. And also, taking the lead from this question, in fact, so while I speak with a lot of learners, what I predominantly find is there is a confusion between should I do CISA first, should I do CRISC first, should I do CISM or CISSP? So, how would you categorize it? Like, I know you briefly touched upon this in the initial part of the session, but if you could just break it down so that it becomes easier for the learners to understand.
Yeah, certainly. The Caesar, as I mentioned, is primarily for the for the auditor. Okay, if you're an auditor, then Caesar obviously is the course that you should consider. Having said that, I teach a lot of people who are not really auditors, And why do I teach them? Because they have to work very closely with auditors, and they want to be equipped with that knowledge. Okay, because auditors, they look into things a certain way, and if I know what I need to consider when I'm looking at my controls, preparing my controls, then I would probably be better prepared when an audit happens. So, like I said, while primarily auditor CISA is for the auditors, but many non-auditors also take the exam. In fact, more than 50% of the people who I teach are actually non-auditors. I teach more non-auditors than the auditors. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, can the auditors take the C-risk? I would highly recommend do that. Maybe start with the C-risk. Similarly, for CSM, it's information security manager. If you're only in the managerial role rather than the auditor, CSM might be a better course for you. And C-risk, as I mentioned, is from the risk practitioner point of view. Now, who's a risk practitioner? Could be anybody, managing risk. And as I mentioned, uh, every role that we have, we are somehow contributing to the risk. As a, like I said, it could be a threat analyst, it could be a vulnerability assessor, penetration tester, it could be in the governance, business continuity, physical security, or as an auditor, or as an information security manager. So all of you could take this course. So this is a more generic course, say risk. And so uh, if I recommend a course, I would probably say do C-risk first, and then doing CSIM would be much more easier. CISA is a little more difficult, so maybe after that you can consider CISA after C-risk, and then CISA if that's your direction. Okay. But C-risk is a very universal course, and I guess, one of my favorite courses to teach, because you learn so much as a risk practitioner, and you realize that, hey, this is something which I've been doing, and I didn't realize that it was part of the risk management practices. And this is what the best practices should be. So once I'm equipped with the knowledge, whatever role that you play, you will be able to do that better.
Great. So having a C-risk is just good sense. For somebody who's looking to elevate their career in information and cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great, great. And so the floor is still open. Mr. Rai is here to answer any queries, any further doubts you may have regarding the certification, the examination, the career potential. So please feel free to drop your queries in the comment section. And we'll wait another 30 seconds, sir, before we wrap up the session.
Sure.
Also, in the meantime, I am flashing our numbers on the screen. Anybody who's looking to get started on your CRISC certification journey, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you set up and get started, and your mentor will be the one and only Mr. Sajrai himself. I will do a quick sweep on YouTube and LinkedIn both in case we missed out on any queries. Guys, you still have another 10 to 20 seconds to drop some questions if you want. Otherwise, please feel free to connect with us on the number on the screen, and we'll be happy to assist you on your journey with us. Oh, all right. So, sir, Satish is writing from LinkedIn. Is there any risk certification other than ISACA?
Um, I think there are quite a few. CGRC uh, from IAC2
I see too. Yeah.
align. Yeah, it's more aligned to the NIST risk management framework. Though it used to be very aligned, now they have slightly, made more universal, but still, it's somewhat aligned to the NIST risk management framework. And so there may be other trainings for ISO 31000 and COSO and so on, but when it comes to a very generic and well adapted risk management course, there's no other better than C-Risk. That's what I keep saying. This is one of my favorite courses to teach because it covers wide, broad range of risk management concepts, which I haven't found in any other certification courses yet. If it is, I find it even better than the CGRC that I mentioned. CGRC is very tightly, integrated with the NIST risk management framework and so on. But this one is very generic. You can apply it for any risk, whether it's enterprise risk, IT risk, or for that matter, any other business risk as well. The principles are very, very solid.
Perfect, perfect. So, once again, I will put the number on the screen for anybody who's looking to get started. And Rama says, thank you so much. So, I think Rama is very happy with the session. Thank you, Rama, for joining.
Thank you
All
all.
right, sir. Yeah.
Look, yeah,
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
yeah. I'm just saying. So hopefully we'll see some of you or all of you in the course that we begin this weekend. Is that so?
Yes, correct. It starts this Saturday.
This Saturday. So thank you very much and take care.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much for guiding us in such depth today. And thank you for all the participants for keeping the session engaged. So, our recommendation, as usual, will be keep learning, keep growing, and we look forward to supporting you in your serious journey with us. So, thank you once again, sir, for taking out the time and joining us today. All right. Thank you, sir. And thank you to all the participants who are going to be watching this in the recorded format. The numbers will be active, so please feel free to join, and we will see you in the next one.